Hi everyone. I just wanted to do a short and I hope as simple as I can video on the fact that all of the outer planets now are moving between 0 and 2 degrees of their new signs. And that may be obvious to some of you, but so this video maybe demand that at a minimum you've got some very basic astrological knowledge and you do have your birth chart downloaded, which you can do free from my website. So you've got some basic orientation around your own birth chart. But it's very interesting that the outer planets in 0 to 2 degrees of their signs are all covering the three different modalities. And by that, I mean cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. So this is what this video is going to be about, and I'm going to just be describing very broadly some of the qualities that we might expect from those planets as they aspect your natal chart. So I'm going to really endeavour to keep this as simple as I can. Okay, so taking cardinal first. Cardinal is initiatory, and the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Now, I think you're all aware that Neptune moved into Aries on the 30th of March, and then Saturn followed Neptune on the 24th of May. So they're both sort of 0 to 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, i.e. Aries in this case. And that is known as the Aries point or the world axis. And it's where if you have a planet or an angle at that point in your chart, it doesn't have to be 0 to 2 degrees of Aries, it can be 0 to 2 degrees of Cancer, 0 to 2 degrees of Libra, 0 to 2 degrees of Capricorn. That planet, that principle, has public potential on the public stage. So the fact that Neptune and Saturn are there, and I'll put the whole video I did on Neptune Saturn, is very powerful for a new birth for you, a new birth for humanity. But in particular, if you have any planets or angles between 0 and 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, they will be aspected and activated and energized by Saturn and Neptune in the coming months. So, and I'm really just going to focus on the hard aspects here. So the hard aspects are known as the conjunction, the square, and the opposition, to keep it very simple. I'd say 99% of my work is looking at conjunction, squares, and oppositions because they are the grit in the oyster, if you like, that makes things happen. They bring action. You have to take action to resolve that grit, if you like, to produce the oyster. Sextiles and trines are very helpful, but they're much more passive. So between the conjunction, the square, and the opposition, the conjunction I always feel is the strongest aspect. And use a tight orb here. I really would use quite a tight orb of about 2 degrees either way about what I'm talking about here. If it's a square, it will be something you have to integrate into that particular planet. And if it's an opposition, it will be something coming from the outside. So what I'm saying here is either Saturn or Neptune is aspecting one of your natal planets or natal angles that sits at between 0 and 2 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you are going to feel this. So, so with Saturn is staying at that 0 to 2 degrees of Aries until the beginning of September. And indeed, we could even really include to the end of September with that. And then it comes back again to that point, January and February. And by April of next year, it will have moved beyond that 0 to 2 degrees. And let's take Saturn first. So Saturn is really about both in the house that it's moving through, and it will have meaning for the planet it is aspecting and the house that is in. And there is a third stage of meaning too, that I don't want to get into in this video, but if you have my two-part video series, you will understand that third stage of meaning. But if I get into that, we'll be here for days. So with Saturn, both the house it's moving through and the planet it is aspecting on that house, that area of life, there could be a sense of hard work, responsibility. It could either be hard work at your place of work, or it could be if it's moving through the fourth house, it could be putting physical work into a house to restore it or refurbish it in some way. Often it brings in more demands from external authority figures, your boss, etc. And there's a weightiness very often about Saturn. It usually brings structural changes into your life. The area it's moving through in any planet it's aspecting, there is a call to change the structure of that particular area of life in some way. And when you do that, and also when you work hard and diligently and conscientiously, Saturn turns lead into gold. I've found my Saturn transits to be fabulously productive because I've always been a hardworking person, and they've always been very productive and very successful. So that's the Saturn part. Saturn and Neptune, of course, are traveling together, but let me try and separate them initially. With Neptune in conjunction, square, or opposition, on the less positive side, it can bring in confusion or a sense of disappointment or disillusionment. It can bring in a sense of deception into that area of life. It's aspecting your fifth house or seventh house. There may be some deception coming up in a relationship that you suddenly discover. But much more positively, this is a planet linked to creativity of all kinds. Every expression of creativity, spirituality, very much so, healing, connection to oneness, that real sense of us being one consciousness. It's very inspiring. And in the Saturn Neptune video, which again, as I say, I'll put below, I talked about this sense of what's real and what's not, because Saturn is the tangible, Neptune is the ephemeral, the ethereal. And one is very solid, Saturn, the other is invisible. And so a positive expression of this is making real the dream. Again, see which houses are being activated by this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune moving forwards together, making real the dream. And it also makes us really think, as we're building this new dream, Saturn is about what's practical, what's realistic, what's pragmatic for the long term. So it's actually very helpful here, because it isn't just kind of airy-fairy Neptune, it's going to be properly grounded by Saturn. So I think that's immensely helpful. But we will be learning much more about the invisible through this strong conjunction, because Neptune, as I say, is about the invisible and ether. And also the fact that Uranus and Pluto are now in air signs. Again, air is invisible. We're going to be learning a lot about air not just being invisible, but air being absolutely jam-packed with information about ether and the part that plays in our lives. And Saturn conjunct Neptune, another expression of that is our mastery of the invisible. Our mastery of the invisible, whether that is our thinking, whether that's our feelings, they are invisible. That's what this whole period, I think, or a very big theme in this period, is about in this massive transition for humanity. Recognizing that everything comes from energy and really developing a conscious understanding and a mastery of that. So super, super important. So that is covering the cardinal signs with Saturn and Neptune. Let's move to the fixed modality now. And that is where Pluto is, because Pluto is in this first couple of degrees of Aquarius. That's a fixed sign, it's fixed air. And so the fixed signs, again, do you have any planets at 0 to 2 degrees of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, those are the fixed signs, you'll be receiving an activation from this transit of Pluto. And Pluto is the planet of endings and beginnings. I've talked about this a great deal. I'll put the Pluto in Aquarius video below as well. It is usually, when it aspects your planets or your angles, it is a really major, major milestone in life. It's a really big deal. And it can appear initially from the outside, particularly if it's an opposition that you're receiving from Pluto to one of your planets or angles, as if there's external control or manipulation or power coming at you in some way. But ultimately, this is meant to teach us empowerment, our own empowerment. So at its best, Pluto transits are always about empowerment. They often start in quite a stressy way of our sense of power being tested, but ultimately they are meant to come to fruition as us stepping into our power. There is always a sense of great intensity with Pluto transits. It kind of takes you down. It's connected to the myth of Persephone when she was kidnapped and taken down to the underworld and crossed the Styx, STYX, in Hades, and it was very dark and very scary and very lonely. There's often this sense of us being very alone emotionally, kind of cut off. It's almost like the world is out there and we're not quite fully engaged in it. We're in quite a dark place of transformation. So it's this great sense of death, transformation and rebirth. And then Persephone, as we know in the myth, comes up to the light and she's stronger and wiser. And this is how the theme of Pluto works. But it can feel, any Pluto transit can bring about permanent changes because it's like a snake shedding a skin. Things are never quite the same again. If it's aspecting your vertical axis in your chart, your MCIC or your fourth house or even your moon, this can bring about really big permanent changes linked to either your home or your family situation in some way, where you need to step into a greater sense of power to take more responsibility within the family unit. So intensity, I think, and transformation are the watchwords there. And then finally, we have the mutable modality, where, of course, now we have Uranus. Uranus has just, on the 7th of July, moved into Gemini. So the mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So again, if you have anything between 0 and 2 degrees or an angle, any of those signs, you're going to be activated by Uranus. And if Pluto is linked to very deep, powerful intensity, permanent change, Uranus is linked to sudden, fast, radical change. So it's speedy, whereas Pluto goes deep and intense. They're different. It's a different energy, different kind of feeling. And again, we're looking at the conjunctions, the squares, and the oppositions. And if we are not, Uranus is about breaking up stale old patterns, routines, things that are deadening, that no longer serve you. So it's very important that we make those changes ourselves, because these are always, Uranus transits can feel very restless and agitated, and there's a feeling of nervous drive and urgency, always urgency. You know, I've got to go do this, running out of time. And there's this big desire for more freedom, more variety, more independence, more breaking down of the old and breaking through to the new. It's the planet linked to awakening and real breakthroughs in your life and in your perception as well. This is the mind of God. And so, again, this can bring major change into your life, and it's much more comfortable, as it is with Pluto, if you initiate the change rather than the change suddenly coming from the outside at you, because that's quite shocking sometimes and sudden, and we're not quite prepared for it. Much better if you initiate the change. And again, you will know where those areas of change lie, because it will be the house area, the area of life that Uranus is moving through. And if it's aspecting a planet or an angle that house area as well. So also, this is linked to, because it's in Gemini, it's linked to very much, Gemini is about our day-to-day life. It's about our friends, our coming and going, our neighbors, our siblings, the shops and stores we go to. It's about daily deliveries. It's those day-to-day transactions. And I think for sure our local neighborhoods are going to change very suddenly and radically in the coming months and years. Our cities, Gemini, also are going to change quite suddenly and radically. Our daily technology, daily Gemini, technology, Uranus. Our computers, our smartphones, I think are going to be old hat very, very soon. And all kinds of new technology that is going to come in. And we must use great discernment in what we think about that and how we use that, because it's the sign of choice. Gemini is the sign of choice. I also very much want to say that Gemini is, well, Uranus, as I've mentioned, is the planet of originality and genius, great creativity. Gemini is also linked to creativity, particularly writing. And this transit of Uranus through Gemini could be brilliant for automatic writing, because Uranus is linked to the mind of God, and it's that kind of boom, download. And you just write. You write whatever's coming through, and you only look back and read it after you've finished. And if you want to try that, the best idea is to have a regular appointment with the universe. It's going to be 5 p.m. every day. And you sit down with a pad and pen, and you just set a clear intention. Let whatever flows through me be for my own highest good, the highest good of all, and the highest good of the earth. And just wait for, and it might just be gibberish the first day, the first week, might just be gibberish. But it's Uranus in Gemini is particularly good for automatic writing. It's also going to enable us, I think, to become more linguistically able. And that may be particularly light language. And the reason I say that is, and I link Salacia to this too. I've mentioned that Salacia is very linked, I think, to photonic light. And it's interesting, quite a lot of people have written to me where they have Salacia prominent in their charts, or they received a Salacia transit and they started to speak light language. I think this is going to be true of Uranus in Gemini too. For instance, I'm thinking back to 1690, where I believe he was a Dutch scientist, Huygens, who developed a new theory of light. And that's when Uranus was also in Gemini. Uranus, I believe, is linked to sort of flashes of lightning, bolts of lightning, flashes of light, thunderbolts. So it's that explosive quality of light, and it's linked to geomagnetics as well. So there's something here about light in Gemini language that I think will start to become more commonplace as well. I also think Uranus is the planet of disruption and chaos, and Gemini is linked to the internet and social media. Because of the unstable geomagnetics, again, that's Uranus in Gemini, I think we may, as I've mentioned in other videos, may experience power outages and cyber attacks and that kind of thing. And that will disturb and dislocate and cause all kinds of issues, not only around aviation, but also around our internet access, which could become patchy from time to time. And that will drive a different form of technology, which in some way is more reliable. And ultimately, it'll drive us to free energy, which of course was discovered a very long time ago. Remember these next few months, and I've done a whole video on this called Rehearsal, our Rehearsal 2025. Remember, these few months are crucial in keeping very conscious. Who do you want to become? Who are you already becoming that you can test out, try out in these few months? You are planting seeds for you, for all of humanity, and for the earth. You are planting seeds in the full launch in the early months of next year. Really, Saturn Neptune move into Aries fully conjunct 044 of Aries on the 20th of February. Uranus moves fully into Gemini on the 26th of April. All of the outer planets are then in their new signs. So there's going to be this feeling of a launch, particularly around about April, May, I would say. So what you are rehearsing, what you are having a test run with, is vitally important. Remember, we have much more of a blank canvas at this time in history than ever before. We're no longer in the predictable hamster wheel. And well done, humanity. Well done, you, for raising your consciousness sufficiently to make that happen. I mean, we have done, I think, well, as Dr. David Clement says, way beyond expectation of what was anticipated for humanity at this stage. That's down to us. It's not down to anybody coming in to save us, certainly any political leader, that's for sure. We've done it through raising our consciousness. So be aware of that and be more conscious, more wise, more discriminating in the choices you make and the seeds you sow for your full launch from this rehearsal into the whole new reality, the new biology, the new human, the new earth in a much fuller way in kind of April, May, June time onwards. And many of us are feeling this in our physicality. We're seeing it all around us. It's becoming more palpable by the day that we have this sense of momentum. So 2025, the degrees to look out for in your natal chart are 0 to 2 degrees of any of the modalities, cardinal, fixed, or mutable, because they're all being aspected by these outer planets right now. Next year, 2026, they will all be moving at about, and I'm just covering here, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, because as of next April 26, Saturn will have moved on, moves much faster than the other outer planets. So Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, next year will be hovering around 4 degrees. So if you've got anything between 3 and 5 degrees of any sign, those planets or angles will be aspected. If I'm looking forward to 2027, those outer planets are hovering around 6 degrees. So if you have any planets or angles between 5 and 7 degrees of any sign, they are going to be aspected by those outer planets. So I just wanted to do this video to take a different look, if you like, a different cut through in all that we're experiencing right now, and really do be aware of this incredibly positive configuration we have right now. I'll put the big picture video below as well, where I talk about that in great detail. This very positive mini grand trine, mini triangle, astrologers are calling it different things, that we have spanning the next 3 years of a period of accelerated evolution that is just incredibly exciting as a whole breakthrough, a whole metamorphosis for humanity into a different state of being. It's a love revolution, it's a cosmic revolution, it's a galactic revolution, and every single one of us is contributing to it. God bless. I hope that romp through the modalities has helped you. And if you honestly didn't understand a word I said, if you get my 2-part video series, I'll put the link for that below. You can watch it as many times as you like, for as long as you like, to infinity, because that will help you understand all that I've shared here. There's way too much in that, and there are too many variables for me to cover, obviously, everything for everyone. But I hope if you've got a little bit of astrological knowledge, what I've shared today will help you. God bless. Be back very soon with the next update for the second half of July. God bless. Bye for now.